Hey, what's going on? This is Sunshine.
And E.
All right.
What's up, YouTube? We're back.
We're back.
Are you hungry?
Why are you hungry?
Yeah, we're gonna.
Oh, food theory time. Okay. Food theory. This is one of people's favorite fast food restaurants. And that says McDonald's is not a restaurant. I guess technically it's not. It's a fast food restaurant. So I don't know where he's going with this, but we're gonna see. So before we get started, if you all can just please like, subscribe, hit the notification button.
Honey?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
We good? Okay. Please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, as I was saying, and also share and comment below. And then we'll watch this and we'll get her comments at the end.
Franchise. McTastic. So this says you agree to pay a franchise fee up front, a Mick franchise fee if you will.
Nice.
And you'll have to pay us a percentage of all your Mick sales.
Okay.
Also, we get to pick the location of your restaurant. We own the Mick building, and you can only Mick rent from us.
This is a bit more intense than I was expecting. I owe my McSoul to the company?
Should we do this another time? You seem McFlurious.
Internet, welcome to Food Theory, the channel that's just a front for a thriving cat herding business. It's no secret that I'm a foodie, a fast foodie in fact, and McDonald's was my home cooking growing up. My diet was a daily rotation of McBurgers, McFries, and McSodas. Realizing that might not be the healthiest option, I tried to get into their salads for a while, the McShakers, but to be honest, they McSucked. Sure, over the years I've watched as McDonald's has changed and evolved, classing up their dining spaces, expanding into specialty coffees, introducing video games into their play spaces. Seriously, when McDonald's first put Nintendo 64 consoles in the play area, it blew my mind. And yet, for all of that change, McDonald's has been a constant. I know what I'm gonna get. I know what it's gonna taste like. I know that the ice cream machine is gonna be broken. I know McDonald's, and so do you. Or do we? About 5 years ago, when I was searching for my first house, our realtor told me something that completely blew my mind. No joke, it was one of those moments that you have in life when your perspective completely changes about the world around you. Like when you find out that the Illuminati is actually real. I mean, what? No. Forget that I said that. Anyway, our realtor told me that McDonald's isn't a food company. It's a real estate company. You heard that right. The most famous and highest grossing fast food chain in the world actually generates more from real estate efforts than they do from, actually selling food. The food is a side business for their purchasing and owning of buildings and land. In the 5 years since, this little factoid has appeared on lots of different listicles, but in all honesty, this was one of the reasons I wanted to make this channel in the first place, to tell you mind-blowing stuff like this. I mean, having multiple revenue streams is smart business, but this goes way beyond mere diversification. McDonald's is arguably the most successful restaurant chain in history, and yet they're somehow even more successful in an entirely different industry. So that's what we're getting to the bottom to today, theorists. Is McDonald's primarily a real estate company, or is that just some clickbaity distortion of the numbers? And if McDonald's is a real estate company, why? How? So put on your business socks, people, cause it's business. It's business time. Let's start at the beginning. McDonald's was founded in 1930s California by the McDonald brothers, Richard and Maurice. The earliest version of the restaurant, which served hot dogs and barbecue, didn't really resemble what we know as McDonald's today, except for one thing: getting food to its customers fast. The McDonald's brothers were way into efficiency and optimization, theory for another day, and their speedy service system caught the attention of milkshake mixer salesman Ray Kroc, who teamed up with the brothers and in 1955 began building McDonald's franchises outward from California at a feverish pace. However, Kroc's fortunes didn't really take off until he met an investor named Harry Sonneborn, who introduced Kroc to a new way way to make money in the restaurant business, real estate. This clip is from the 2016 film The Founder, a film I highly recommend if you haven't seen it. It gets really into the heart of the matter.
You don't seem to realize what business you're in. You're not in the burger business. You're in the real estate business. You don't build an empire off a 1.4% cut of a 15-cent hamburger. You build it by owning the land upon which that burger is cooked.
Spoiler alert, Sonneborn's idea proved to be wildly successful, and definitely a lot better than Dunder Mifflin Infinity. And with Sonneborn's help, Ray Kroc implemented changes that would alter the course of McDonald's history, making him an insanely wealthy man worth over $600 million when he passed away in 1984. So here's how the new system, today referred to as the Sonneborn model, worked. Let's pretend it's the late 50s and Joe Regular Guy wants to open up a McDonald's. To do it, he needs to purchase a franchise, basically permission to open a restaurant from Ray Kroc. Kroc is happy to sell a franchise to Joe. After all, it's his job to build out a network of McDonald's franchises across the USA. However, Kroc and Sonneborn have now added themselves a catch. In order to get a McDonald's franchise, Joe Regular Guy must agree to operate out of a building that Kroc chooses, on land that the company owns. Now, this new type of arrangement accomplishes a couple of things. First, it gives McDonald's increased control over its franchises, allowing them to strategically place the different franchises at appropriate distance away from each other, and to ensure that their locations are in the ideal parts of town. Secondly, it enables McDonald's to collect more money from its franchises than ever before. Not only does McDonald's get to collect a one-time $45,000 franchise fee and a percentage of sales from each of those franchises, but they also get rent checks from their franchises. That's right, McDonald's is also Joe Regular Guy's landlord.
So, in
and
other
when there's,
words,
you know, statistically a new McDonald's opened every 14 and a half hours somewhere in the world, that's gonna add up. McDonald's, along with many of the other fast food chains that you know and love, use the Sonneborn model of real estate ownership within their franchises to this very day. And hey, when the restaurant doesn't work out, they can always just sell the land. But wait, there's more. The real estate benefits to McDonald's don't end there. In addition to collecting rent, there's also tax benefits to be had. There's a lot of upside if you own a commercial building and know what you're doing, and boy howdy does McDonald's know what it's doing. First, the use of commercial land is a tax write-off, meaning that whatever it costs you in a year to buy and keep that land is gonna come out of your income before you pay taxes. And this is important. Businesses that earn a lot of money want as much to come out of those earnings as possible, so there's as little left to tax at the end, because taxed money isn't coming back to you or your business. So they buy equipment, they give away bonuses, they invest that money, all of it to get it off the books before it gets taxed. So sure, you might not need that extra camera or whatever, but by spending money on it, you're basically getting a 20% discount on it, the 20% that would otherwise be handed over to the government through taxes. As any accountant will tell you, you want your business to basically look like it's earning $0 at the end of the year by spending that money on things that help the business but can also function as tax write-offs. I'm not saying this is wrong or right by any means, by the way. I'm just saying that it's legal, and so smart business people looking to hold on to their money try to exploit this for all it's worth. And the Sonneborn model really works that system. They own the land, and land is a really weird category of business because unlike other things you buy, like say your car or your phone, land isn't expected to expire or deteriorate. In accounting, this is called depreciation, and you feel it if you've ever tried to sell an old car that you've driven down into the ground. By the end of its life, it's worth practically nothing. Well, it turns out that you can use depreciation to your advantage with taxes, and accountants can spread out the cost of large purchases over the lifespan of that item. For a concrete example, let's say I buy a new BurgerBot 2000, which is capable of pumping out hamburgers all by itself, and I expect it to churn out those burgers for the next 5 years before it starts to break down. If it cost me $100,000 to buy, I can choose to amortize the cost, which is to say I can incrementally take its depreciation into account on my taxes. When I do this, I would be telling the IRS that instead of deducting the full $100,000 purchase for my BurgerBot this year, I want to instead deduct $20,000 every year for the next 5 years. Same amount, but now now it's just spread out. This might just seem like a silly difference, but when you're dealing with way bigger numbers and tricky tax brackets, that kind of distributed long-term cost can massively reduce how much you owe each year. Here's how. Let's say BurgerBot and I are able to earn $50,000 in a year. If I deduct the full $100,000 cost of buying the bot on my taxes in the first year, I'd be showing the government that I wound up with a net loss of $50,000. In that year, I would pay $0 in tax because I've shown the government I didn't earn any money. But then, for the next 4 years, I'm paying 21% on my full $50,000 earnings. That's $10,500 each year for a grand total of $42,000 paid in taxes across all 5 years. That is in scenario 1, deducting everything up front. But now, let's look at scenario 2, where I spread out the cost of BurgerBot, deducting $20,000 from my earnings every year. Instead of that minus $50K on year 1 and plus $50K every other year, now I'm telling the IRS that I earn $30,000 every year. The $50K that I do earn minus the $20,000 distributed costs of the BurgerBot. I'm still paying that same 21% each year in taxes for 5 years, but now it's off of $30K instead of $50K, which winds up being $6,300 a year or $31,500 over the 5 years that BurgerBot is expected to function. That translates to an extra $10,500 that I get to keep over that 5-year period, just because of some funny tax work with depreciation schedules. Even if you didn't follow any of that example, the TLDR here is that spreading out costs can save you huge bucks in the long run. And when you're a company like McDonald's with a massive $21 billion in revenue in 2019 alone, those sorts of cost savings are gonna add up. But how do they do that? Why is any of this relevant? I just said that land doesn't depreciate. And while that's true, anything you build on that land does. Paved the lot, that's now improved land. Built a building, you can depreciate that. And there's a really weird loophole that helps McDonald's here in a big way, because rented land can be depreciated. And almost all of McDonald's land is rented. Only 7% of McDonald's locations are actually owned and operated directly by the company. The remaining 93% of locations are franchises. Thanks to all of those locations, in 2019, McDonald's reported $1.39 billion in total depreciation, which accounts for roughly $292 million in a single year of tax savings, which is a lot of money, but with annual revenue of $21 billion, it's barely a rounding error. And that's why it's now time for us to talk about revenue versus earnings. Revenue is the total amount of money you pull in, period. You don't subtract costs, you don't subtract taxes, you just count up all the money that you collected in the year, and that is your revenue. Your earnings are different. That is what you actually made at the end of the year after you factor in all of your costs. When you look at McDonald's, their revenue and their earnings tell totally different stories. Remember how I said McDonald's only owns and operates 7% of its locations? Well, that 7% makes up a whopping 47% of its revenue. That's right, the 7% of company-owned locations make almost the same amount of money as the 93% of franchises combined. But owning the locations comes with a lot of costs. So when it comes to earnings, the script actually gets flipped. The company-owned locations need to pay all their expenses, from equipment and staff to the land costs. That means that despite pulling in $9.42 billion from their company-owned locations in 2019, they only kept $1.5 billion of those earnings. Meanwhile, McDonald's barely has to do anything to keep its franchises running, since that's the franchisee's job. As a result, McDonald's gets to keep about 86% of the franchise revenue as earnings, meaning that of the $11.6 billion that they made in 2019, they got to keep over $10 billion of that. So what percent of all that is rent as opposed to money from, actually selling hamburgers? You remember from way back when you thought that that was what this company did? Well, McDonald's doesn't break it down in their financial reports, but we can make use of the numbers we have available to make a reasonable guess. We know McDonald's 2,770 company-run locations make $9.42 billion, or $3.4 million each on average. If we assume that their company-owned locations make close to the same as franchised locations, it means each franchise would be paying 4% of that, or about $136,000 to McDonald's in franchise fees every year. For its 35,925 franchise locations, that's roughly $4.9 billion off of franchises for the food, for a total of $6.4 billion in food. McDonald's reported $13.15 billion in 2019 earnings, So the remaining $6.75 billion that's left is going to be new franchises and finally all that real estate. $6.4 billion in food versus $6.75 billion in all the rest. We have ourselves a close race, my friends, but we can say that McDonald's makes more in non-food earnings than direct food earnings. So there you have it, friends. What was true in Ray Kroc's day is still true today. McDonald's makes more money from real estate than they do from hamburgers. And what's more, McDonald's has been leaning even harder into real estate in recent years. From 2015 to 2019, McDonald's sold off over half of its company-owned locations, in many cases making a tidy profit off the land that they were invested in, and shifted more of their reliance away from running an actual restaurant and more towards being a real estate firm that happens to build all its buildings with golden arches out front. And who can argue with this approach, at least from a business standpoint? Their massive commercial real estate portfolio has allowed them to weather the 2020 insanity with relative ease. McDonald's Corporation stock has fully recovered from COVID, and as of the making of this video is trading near an all-time high. It's a similar story with other major restaurant chains too, like Starbucks and Wendy's, who took a page from Sonneborn's book and have gotten into the real estate game themselves. In fact, the practice of collecting rents from your own franchises has pretty much become par for the course for major restaurant chains. Meanwhile, smaller restaurants who don't have the luxury of being their own landlords have been hit real hard this year. And I mean real hard. It's estimated that 85% of all independent restaurants in the United States could permanently close by the end of this year. So let me leave you with this thought, theorists, especially those here in the US where COVID is still surging and where many small businesses missed out on the limited number of Paycheck Protection Program or PPP loans that were made available to American companies. If you happen to be in a position where you're able to choose between local restaurants and national chains, consider ordering local more now than ever before. Oh, and if you happen to be in a position to start a restaurant, consider becoming the landlord too. But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory.
That's what I was going to say. I said I would want to become an owner. I don't want to be a franchise. It's just, I don't know. It's just really crazy how they started out as food, and what we thought is not really food, that they're making their money.
Well, I mean, a lot of them do. A lot of them use the profits from their specific thing that they're doing and invest in other things, and they can ultimately end up making a lot more in those other things, which is a smart thing to do.
It's smart. It's smart, but I never understood how the franchise thing went.
I mean, it's almost just
now that makes a little sense.
Yeah, just the privilege to have the name almost when the break, which is good because you don't. McDonald's they're gonna advertise, they're gonna put up, and you get credit for it. I mean, you get your business, and you get, because of that, you reap benefits for that. So the franchise kind of like up front, all these benefits you're gonna reap down the road. Here's your payment for that.
And some, right. Some, now I'm wondering now, because they're remodeling, a lot of franchise have done some remodeling. But say McDonald's, we use that since we're talking about it, they remodel, but not necessarily remodel that location. They pick up and move and start another location. So what do they do with that land? Have they sold it? Or are you just sitting on it?
Some of them I think they sold, because even some of the other franchises or different restaurants, you'll see it closed, and then you see somebody open up a little restaurant. You could tell what it used to be. It used to be a Burger King. It used to be a Hardee's. It used, so a lot of them, they probably end up selling that land to someone that comes along. So they end up selling it, but they might not tear the building down. Or whoever, that's up to the person that purchases the property, what they're gonna do with it. So, it's that when it comes to business. I remember when I used to work at a department store, and I worked in the pharmacy department, and I was looking at some of them when the invoices come in. I looked at it and I was like, wait a minute, it says this, we bought this for this much, and they say we're selling for this much. That's the same price. He said, yeah, because they figure if they can get people to buy that, then they'll buy something else. So they're willing to take a loss sometimes, or not make any money on one item to get somebody in there to buy another.
I mean, that's the same thing they do, like with coupons. They'll give you buy one get one free, because they know when you come in, you buy one. They're going to use McDonald's, one burger, you get one free. Chances are you're going to buy some French fries with that.
Exactly.
Then you're going to buy a drink.
Because people have this in their mind that I can buy this stuff. Why? Because I'm ahead. I'm ahead now. See, I'm already got a deal, so I can't. I'm still good. Which some places I would suggest never go into without some kind of coupon or deal or something, because they're out there. You just gotta search for them. I mean, really, I think there was a saying, only suckers pay full price. And so if you cannot pay full price, talk to people or look for coupons. There's always a deal there, and you might as well save as much as you can. But we're gonna get out of here, and before we do me a favor, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, also share and comment below, and I do believe that's it.
Yep. That's it. Thanks for listening to
Sunshine
Sunshine
and
and
E.
E.